We have a camera guy over there. He's behind these cameras. Then there's the voice dude. He's listening to it with his headphones. His name is James Rodriguez. He's from Spain. Then there's media. James is cracking up now. I'm laughing about it. Hello. Welcome back to the studio, where you're not with us because we're here and you're somewhere behind the screen.
Probably in Singapore or Malaysia or something.
Or Philippines. This is another episode of Esports Vikings Weekly. And this time we're instead of doing the news fashion kind of thing, I'm going to ask a question and then we're going to start talking about it. My name is Teemu, I'm the host.
I'm Janne. Was that the question, by the way?
No.
Okay. No.
Do you want to know the question?
Shoot.
What's your phone number? No, I'm just kidding. Why is esports important?
Well, that's pretty straight up against the wall, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, let me think. Why is esports important? Well, to me, I would say personally, I've been a part of esports for a very long time. So I've seen it when it was, in some way a little baby, and now we're getting, somewhere else, right? So I think the difference is massive. It was a massive difference in the beginning of the 2000s and 2010, how much the growth that was happening, right? And how much jobs there were, how much, the production values went up and so on and so on. But then we have an even bigger jump from 2010 until where we are today. So I think today almost every single kid and, they get involved in esports in one way or another. So to me, it's important that basically we do something good with it and teach people the right ways to, play games, watch games, whatever it is. So for me, a lot of it revolves around, the jobs around esports, as in game developers or, casting people, whatever it is. I think that is important to me. Because Fortnite has 200 million players. I could guess a lot of those are kids, right? So I think it's important to show them the right way to do things or something like that. If that makes any sense.
It does. The question itself is retardedly big.
Of course, it's a big topic, right?
Yeah, and there isn't like a simple answer. But what I like there is you said that you've been involved in esports in one way or another since esports was a baby.
Yeah.
I think at the moment esports is like a spoiled teenager.
That's
There's
probably true.
so much money involved, and because the athletes are fairly young.
Sure.
So there is this weird kind of, you could even say a bubble around it.
Sure.
Because the reality is like, if we're talking about prize money kind of, the prize pools are really, really, really top heavy. If you are on the top, you make retarded amounts of money. If you're not on the top, you eat your fingernails for breakfast.
No, but obviously in a lot of games, it's basically if you're not top 10 in the world, you're worth nothing.
Yeah.
Obviously it's different for some of the bigger ones. It's more teams fit into the frame or whatever. But in general, yes, it is really top heavy, and it's the same for any esports. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done around that, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah. Also, I want to add what I was talking about before. I think one of the main parts there as well is to teach, older people or parents about esports, because their kids are probably interested. So it's they need to understand what they're dealing with too. So I think that is probably something I focus a lot on, and I always try to tell people, the reality of it, because a lot of times you hear these myths or just, some people have a picture of esports being like one thing, but for me it's a totally different one. And it's probably more professional than a lot of people seem to think. It's not just playing video games in some basement and earning millions of dollars randomly or something,
I think that's a pretty good aspect to bring up. You know this, some other people might not know, but I used to work as a youth guide in Helsinki City, under Helsinki City Youth Department, and at the time we had basically a junior organization. We operated just like any junior sports organization, with the exceptions that our players played esports.
Yep.
So we had League of Legends teams, we had a Dota team, we had 2 Counter-Strike teams, we had some Hearthstone players, we had ex-pro players as coaches. Then we had us youth guides doing our youth work, kind of being like the support, kind of big brother kind of role there. And one of our tasks was to, communicate with the parents and help them understand that what's going on. And whenever we were speaking about it, I always said, like, think of it as your son or daughter would be playing football. Like, they come to practice. We had LAN practice every week.
Yep.
So think of it as they're playing any other sport. The only exception is that they're playing esports.
That's a great initiative, because a lot of kids are obviously playing these games, and if you can arrange things like that, that's great, right? Yeah. Instead of having people being negative about it, they love doing it, so shouldn't we push them further and make something good out of it, instead of being negative and be like, why would you play games, or why would you do that? Because I think you can learn a lot of good things from games, and especially if you have, like you said, ex-pro players or, older people guiding you through it. I mean, that's great. And also, speaking of it, it's not only becoming a player or a professional player in one of these games is extremely hard. It is. Yeah. But there's so much else you can do besides playing the game, further down the line when you're, finish school and whatever you're doing. There might be other opportunities to work in these fields, or just in esports in general.
Yeah, well, let's start talking about career options.
Yeah.
So, with the topic being why is esports important, a big portion of it is careers and jobs in general.
Sure.
So, we have the game development industry. We have the people creating these games.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of people. So
that's a massive industry. The amount of games being produced at the moment is probably higher than ever before, because everybody wants to make the next big esports game, because that's payday.
Yeah, well, sure, that's how it goes, right? But this also, I think, is important when we talked about what you did earlier. These kids who like playing games, when they get a little bit older, or maybe they start, reading other stuff in school and so on, maybe like programming or whatever, they might find an interest in something that leads to this too. So the passion, I just want to see people, promoting the passion. If people have a passion for esports, do something good with it instead of pushing it down, Yeah. So this is one of the examples. For an example, my little brother, he used to be, he played a lot of games, but then he got an interest for programming, and then he became a game developer, and I would like to think that I tried to help him through it instead of being like, what are you doing? Why do you care about these games? It's ridiculous or something. There's a lot of options, and you can find a way to, show your passion in different ways, right? So that's one alternative.
Besides game development, then we have obviously the player path to be a professional player, but that's a margin that 1 in a million make it?
Well,
maybe?
I would say like this. That's obviously where most people start. They want to become a really good player. That's usually the first point, But that is probably the hardest one to reach, Out of all these categories we have, the player part is probably the hardest. There's so few who can make it there. And of course, I don't want to kill your dreams here either, but it is the reality. It's really, really tough. But that's why it's so good that there's these other paths,
Yeah. Then we have, when we look at just organization, we have coaches, we have managers, we have like people taking care of physical and mental health. We have someone organizing all the logistics. Basically, as you have the same jobs as in every other sports organization.
For sure. I mean, these big organizations hire a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, it can be everything from making videos, taking pictures, to what you were talking about, or these organizations are getting really, really big, especially the ones who are involved in a lot of different games too. Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities there.
Then we have the esports, what we call talent. We have the analysts, casters, hosts. That's a big business, and in a way, those some of the talent, they're kind of superstars on their own field.
Oh,
if you take someone like, if we talk about casters, the first person that comes to my mind, we have Toby One and OD Pixel in Dota. Yeah. Then when talking about Counter-Strike, Anderson Semler, Sadokist.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, they are superstars at this point, to be honest. And I think, I keep on bringing up how to, get to this point or something, but I think it's really cool that we have a lot of casters and analysts who maybe they didn't reach a top level as a player, but they used their knowledge and their skill they built up for years and years and became analyst. Jesus Christ, yeah, that was hard. Or they became a caster and so on. So there's a lot of opportunities to use your knowledge in other ways than playing the game. Again, just want to point that out.
And then there's people like, when you think of, let's say, Dota 2, the international, like Shiva and Casey, you have to have them there. If there's no the international without Shiva and Casey.
No, it wouldn't work. No. It would be, something would be wrong.
Or then you have Blast Pro Series, the interviews that Frankie does.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, right? Yeah. I mean, it goes really fast too when somebody like that actually makes it, and it's obvious everybody loves them because they are doing such a good job at what they do. It's simple as that.
Then obviously, kind of like here, you have the broadcast. Like we have a camera guy over there. He's behind these cameras. Then there's the voice dude. He's listening to it with his headphones. His name is James Rodriguez. He's from Spain. Then there's media. James is cracking up now. I'm laughing about it. Then we have the media. We have designers creating all the graphics. When you look at esports broadcast, there's so much stuff happening. Yeah. It's insane. So the amount of people needed to make that happen is absolutely crazy.
Sure. So anyway, I mean, how's it going, everyone?
No, amazing. Yeah.
So I think the important part with that is to realize, for example, if you're a parent and your kids are into esports, I would understand that you would tell them it's really hard to earn money by being a player or whatever. Like, not that I want you to tell them that, try to help them, but that's a reality. But there's so many different options, and I think it's really important for people to realize there's more to it than playing the game. And because usually all these fairy tale stories about in Fortnite this kid winning $3 million, it's all good and cool, whatever, but there's so many different options, and promotes the passion.
And then another kind of thing, when you ask why is esports important, entertainment.
Of course.
Esports is entertainment as traditional sports are. Us humans, we've always had entertainment.
Sure, you're human.
No, but like when you go to the Roman Empire time, they have the gladiators.
No, of course. I mean, entertainment's always been there, and obviously, I mean, I think at this point, most people watch esports as entertainment, not something they actively participate in themselves. I mean, it's mostly entertainment for people, and of course, again, I think it's super important that we are getting to a point where productions are good. It's all, you can see it's professional, right? Which is good because it shows people this is something real. We can build it as a professional thing, because 15 years ago, it was true. It was some guys in a basement doing some cast about some tournament, and we come a long way, but we're still improving too.
And from the entertainment perspective, the Generation Z, the teenagers now, esports appeals to them. So the kids at the moment are growing up with esports being like normal. It's part of their everyday life, such as football and ice hockey and basketball and everything. Esports is just like any other sport to them. So, excuse my language, but the old people who are trying to fight against esports, they should just kind of like say like, okay, it's happening.
Well,
fighting against it doesn't really help anyone, but just kind of, you don't need to like esports to understand the value and that it's here to stay. And
well, maybe, but I mean, that's easier said than done. But I think we have a lot of good examples in countries who were early with esports and good at it early on and got coverage and so on in media, whatever. Like Sweden is a good example, since I'm from there. And 10 years ago, we had a lot of people fighting against it. I would say today, most people have realized it's something bigger and it's something that's here to stay. So we have started to try to make something good out of it. And I think a lot of other countries that were later into the esports scene will have a similar path down the road. But I think it's still important that, you know, everybody tries to show the best side of esports always.
Yeah.
You know, for that reason, right?
So that's why esports is important.
Apparently so.
I don't have. I mean, I could add a tons of things, but in my opinion, if we start like diving deeper, we're just gonna circle around. And
I think a little bit like this, right? I think it's important for different reasons for different people.
Obviously.
But I think the most important part is to get people to understand the reality of what esports is, that it actually, how big it is, that it is here to stay, and how we can, you know, evolve it the best way possible instead of fighting against it, because it is not going away. That's for sure. So, you know, that's pretty much my part.
Yeah. I think that's it. That's the answer to why esports is important. Not the full answer. You might even not agree with us, but you're still gonna like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are going to be back in 1 week in here on the couch talking about esports, just as per usual.
Yep. See you in 1 week.
Ciao!